Okay, great. I think this is the time to begin. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our most recent talk in the Lost and Found Agency series. Just for a bit of information, the Lost and Found Agency series features artists, professionals, and researchers from a variety of disciplines to hold a monthly public conversation and lecture series online. So these events range from formal lectures to informal participatory conversations that encourage exchange in a peer-to-peer learning environment. The Lost and Found thematic engages key thinkers and makers addressing themes pertaining to decolonization, the climate crisis, alternate economies, reciprocity, new forms of democracy, and democratic engagement, migration, and consensus building in the age of fake news, among other topics of the participants' choosing. Today, we are hosting a conversation between Folkwild Arts Strategic Director Nicolaus Schafhausen and Ekaterina Degot, who is an art historian and the director of the steirischer herbst and the festival, which we will hear more about today. This conversation will explore the ongoing war in Ukraine, the visual aesthetic of war, and the role that art plays within the complex and unique matrix of war. This month, the organization that Ekaterina is the director of is opening up an exhibition called A War in the Distance, an exhibition that combines historical works from the gallery's collection with projects by contemporary artists as a means to explore the relationship to war, its causes, and lasting effects. This conversation will include a detailed analysis of the exhibition's theme, presenting insights on the effect of repressed conflicts and the impact a vital reading can produce. I'm going to now let Nicolaus introduce Ekaterina properly.
Yeah, thank you, Michaela. I would like to add a mini detail. Of course, you can ask questions in the chat, and Michaela will be read those questions to all of us, and then we try, or Ekaterina tries to answer. Welcome all, and I have the privilege to introduce you, Ekaterina. We have met many years ago. I don't know anymore the exact date. It's definitely a while ago. And a couple of years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, you were appointed being the director of the steirischer herbst. I have no idea how to pronounce steirischer herbst in English. Is there a translation in English?
Well, it is translated as Styrian autumn because it's an autumn festival in the region of Styria, which is one of the Austrian regions.
Yeah, so but on your website, when you go into English it doesn't translate.
Well, historically, it is not translated. It's considered an idiom.
Yeah, okay. So, and you, we can talk about this later, also how these, the autumn in Styria, the festival started. Yeah, a little bit to where you are coming from and why we invited you. Maybe I should start with why we invited you. We want to, with this series, Lost and Found Agency, Fogo Island is based off the coast of Newfoundland. So this is very, very far away from where you are, in the most eastern coast of Canada. We started the series a while ago, in the time of the pandemic. For us, the most important is we want to learn. Ekaterina Degot is an art historian, a researcher, a curator, born in Russia, born in Moscow, and based in Graz, in Styria, leading the festival Steirischer Herbst as artistic director and chief curator since 2018. Prior to that, Ekaterina was artistic director of the Academy of the Arts of the World in Cologne, Germany, from 2014 to 2017. I know that you received the Igor Zabel Award for Culture and Theory in 2014. I'm sure most of the participants here are not familiar with Igor Zabel. Igor Zabel has been a very influential curator and historian from Slovenia who passed away very young, I think in his 40s. He was very influential also for me, learning about, as a German, learning about the art scenes and cultural activities in the former Yugoslavia. And not only, but this is how I got to know him in the 1990s and the early 2000s. After he passed away, I think friends of him founded this award, and he remains a very important figure, art historian and curator for that region. Before, the focus of your work, when I read your biography, it says, or it tells us, you are interested in the aesthetic, social, political issues in Russia and Eastern Europe from the 19th century to the post-Soviet era. I know that the term post-Soviet is problematic for many people who are from the former Soviet states.
Well, if they prefer to call it neo-capitalist, please.
No. I know. You know, we are on Vogel Island. We are having a, we don't look at passports, but we had a lot of artists in residence from the Baltic countries, also from Russia. But I know that people are from the Baltic countries are extremely sensitive about this term. I had to learn this.
Well, I'm mostly working with Eastern Europe, so if they want to be off this ship, fine, although they are stripping themselves from an important part of the legacy, also artistically. But of course, I cannot insist to anyone. It's just there was a transition from the Soviet to capitalism. Like, this is why I say neo-capitalist. One can say neo-capitalist states that can also would be legitimate.
No, it's an interesting remark. Yeah. Also, again, I want to learn, and but I know that people are sensitive about it. I just wanted to mention it, and you invite. We should talk about Augustas Serapinas later about what he is doing there, because this we.
Oh yes.
And also, there are a couple of artists in your recent festival who have been on Vogel Island, who have been artists in residence, and with Augustas Serapinas we organized a show. But I know that he is one of your central figures at your recent festival. Before leaving Russia in 2014, you worked at the State Tretyakov Gallery for quite a long time. You have been art columnist for the newspaper Kommandant, and from 2008 to 2012, you worked as the senior editor of Open Space. It's an independent online magazine from Russia, focusing on art news, art criticism, and cultural analysis. You also contributed to Art Forum, Freeze, eFlux magazine, and others. You created the Russian Pavilion in 2001 at the Venice Biennale, and you co-curated the first Euro Industrial Biennale in Yekaterinburg together with Cosmin Kostinas and David Griff in 2010, and co-directed the first Bergen Assembly in Bergen, Norway in 2013, also with David Griff. When we had our very short preparation talk earlier today, and I want to start with this question. You don't have to answer it personally, but it's a personal question, but you can, try to make it abstract. As a Russian-born curator, intellectual, academic, working in Austria, and I have been working in Austria also for 7 years, and in Austria, Austria is very much dependent, or used to be very much dependent also on Russian gas. Probably it still is. I'm not so familiar with it, but how are you seen as a Russian? You hold a Russian passport?
Yes, actually. So people don't understand that many of people who hold Russian passport would be very happy to get something else. But yes, unfortunately, I still hold the Russian passport.
Okay, I don't want to dive into it. Unfortunately, unfortunately, we will keep it there. So, but when you were this year's title, and I think also topic of the steirischer Herbst Festival, it's called War in the Distance.
Yes.
War in the distance. From our perspective, from Newfoundland, the war is very, very, very far in the distance.
It's a war in the distance. It's not the war. It's a war. So it's about many wars. And there was a prologue to kind of some sort of an emergency prologue in summer, where we showed films from Ukrainian filmmakers and about Ukraine exclusively, so to concentrate on this topic of what's going on today or what led to it. But the festival and the exhibition now is not only about the Russian aggression in Ukraine. It's rather about, so all my festivals are about what's going on actually here in Austria, in Graz somehow, and how it is related to the rest of the world. So the crucial word is in the distance, that how here many wars actually were perceived as being in the distance. In the Balkans, like it's not Europe, kind of, it's far away. And to some extent, it's still the case today. So it's rather about that, so about different wars. So it's Ukrainian war, it's a Russian war in Ukraine. Here is the focus, the point of view, that's something that focuses, but it's not the only topic.
Okay, but the title of the festival is a war in distance. Looking at the artist list, there are several Ukrainian artists, but also Russian artists.
Yes.
And for someone like me who shares his time between Canada and Europe, and in Europe I'm living in Brussels and in Berlin, and having both friends from the Ukraine and Russia, it depends a little bit to their generations, but they are not necessarily anymore on speaking terms. I'm not speaking Russian, so that means I cannot follow their private conversations. But how does it feel working with both? Or do you speak Russian? So it means you have a relationship to the artists you are working with. How do they work together?
Well, I must say that I'm very, very grateful to all the Ukrainian artists who agreed to be part of the festival. And not all of them, actually, there were some people who did not agree, and that I can also, of course, respect. Including those I knew. There, as you can imagine, I knew many artists before, some I didn't. We also have not just artists, but we also have a big bunch of writers who are contributing to a local magazine. And I'm very grateful to those who actually agreed to participate. And I'm honored that it's actually happening. And I'm very glad that it is happening because yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to shape the world where this will be possible. I know it's not possible for everybody, not for every generation, but at least for some of us it is. And we have very honest conversation, brotherly, sisterly, with many artists. It's also a question how I am perceived. You know, some Ukrainian artists recently told about me, and I was very glad to hear that, like, she's not a good Russian, she's an ally. I'm an ally. So that's what I hope to be. I don't want to be a good Russian because I don't like this term, but I'm really an ally to this war of Ukraine. And although I hope you understand that it's very dangerous for me to say this publicly, but I do. Yes, and this is why it is important, but it was not a goal in itself to have Russians and Ukrainian together. I just had some works that are central to understand what is going on. Now, for instance, we commissioned a new film to Katy Chukrov, which is a filmmaker and a theorist and artist living in Moscow. And she made a film about the war in Abkhazia of the same scenario in 91, as a war everybody forgot about and nobody cared about in 91. But it's about what was, it's a black comedy of sorts about refugees and people who stayed there, actually. So that's what she's interested in, about a war in Abkhazia.
When I was born in West Germany, I remember, and from a generation who remembers I don't know if you can call it the first Cold War, but I remember when I was in school, I remember the whole Eastern Hemisphere used to be, as Eastern Europe and Russia was a black spot for me, you know? So they, when I was in school, everything was black. Yeah, the maps were just, also East Germany was just black. And for someone who has worked a lot in former Eastern Europe and in Russia, I also emotionally, for the first time in my adult life, I don't know how to describe it, but I'm sure that we are going through a transformation of a new world order. Yeah, yes. Not only economically, not only politically, but also culturally.
Yes.
And we don't know yet how this will unfold. Yeah, that situation. But which role can, in such dramatic, is such a far too simple word, yeah? In such a dramatic time, which role will culture and art play, or can act at that very moment? Are they useless?
My answer will be very traditional and probably not fashionable, because it is now, you know, bon ton to say that art serves to bring people together, to, you know, create friendships, create communities. It can do all those things, but I don't know if during the time of war. My view of art is, as I say, is very traditional. I think art is about reflection, critical reflection, but also witnessing things. Art is about a testimony, a visual testimony. This is why I value art which is kind of realist, you know, documentary, although it also can have a fictional dimension. And as I said, reflection of what's going on. I completely agree with you that the world is changing in a drastic way. Also, I feel like everything I was relying upon, like conceptually, historically, my view of the world that included, I don't know, the victory of Soviet Union over fascism, for instance, that is all completely collapsing. And so many things are not valid anymore. And I think we see repercussions of that in current discussions in completely different fields. But I think that feeling that everything is kind of collapsing is there. But in that situation, artists still can do watch things, observe things, reflect on them also in terms of like represent them in one or another way. That can be a very lonely activity also. So that might be not about communities, not necessarily about communities, but that's still something that might be, I believe in long-term art, so to speak, in something that will stay longer than the artist lives and maybe even his generation in general. and something that will still be telling us things decades and centuries after. And actually war cannot stop that.
I agree with you. So I don't think at all that we are very far away from each other. This, my view on art is also very traditional. But for me personally, I feel very, very tiny, very, very small. So again, in that, although you're running a festival, I have been director of institutions, larger institutions than the ones I'm directing now, and but we have what as directors of institutions or festivals, what most of individual artists don't have. We have a certain visibility in an instrument, yeah. And we want to, and you are doing this at that very moment. We have a voice, we can speak out,
Yeah.
which we do, but what you do with your festival, yeah, there. So to whom are you speaking? Yeah, to whom are you speaking, and for whom are you advocating for the arts as art? To whom do you want to reach out, and what do you want to say with your festival?
I'm definitely reaching out to the audience of the festival, which is not a specifically art audience. I think that many smaller art institutions are very happy having small art communities around them, but in Graz, that community is really very small. There's no, as you know, there is no art school in Graz, and there are not that many artists. They do exist, but actually my ambition is to go beyond the professionals, but to reach out to normal people, which in Graz would be, yes, educated audience of steirischer herbst that might be visiting it since years. And of course, the steirischer herbst is a specific festival. I think you want to ask about it. So it has a long history of that, some sort of like between conservatism and modernity. So, and it's a constant struggle of an avant-garde in a conservative surroundings. And of course, we are speaking to people who also feel like us. And of those, there are many in Graz, but they are not necessarily like professional art audience. And that's my responsibility, but of course also has to reach out internationally and has to make this whole situation here like meaningful. So we have to reach out to everybody and to find allies. And this is why I'm very happy that we can talk. I can talk to a place where I've never been before. And that's important.
Vogel Island is an island, what I said earlier, an island of an island, with a population of approximately 2,500 or 2,400 people. So, and everything what we do, we ask ourselves, what does our program has to do with the local, with the islanders, with the people who are living there. Yeah? So I think we are always struggling with the, inviting international or global guests to a community. Yeah, and you do the same in Graz. Graz is a city of, I think, 200,000 people, maybe. Yeah, and but it's all, to my understanding, it's always about relation building and learning from each other. Are there any conversations, or is there a dialogue between your local audience and the guests you have invited, or do you try to create a dialogue about the active dialogue about the topics you are addressing?
Yes, there is such a thing as artist talks, like literally where the audience is coming, also asking questions, interested audience. Yeah, that happens. But I'm maybe more interested that artists are bringing some questions to the table, and people in Graz will be thinking about them and remembering those works and saying after years, you know what, there was such a sculpture and it made me look differently at this place, and I understood which history was behind it. And so that sort of connection, this is longer lasting. Of course, the bonding is also happening. This is also part of the festival. It's a very nice thing that artists are meeting each other and they're meeting locals. That is happening, of course, too, but I'm aiming at a longer perspective.
The Ukrainian and the Russian artists you invited, I know it's an international festival and that you are not only invited Russian and Ukrainian artists, but could they travel to Graz?
Well, some of the Ukrainians we have in the program have been on residency with us for a longer time, of which like it was a very, very, very kind of mutually interesting and also very pleasant, situation. And I'm very glad we were able to give this residency. That was for women, as you know. For men to quit Ukraine, they need special permission as artists for a certain time, but we could organize that too. But of course, it's also decision of everybody. You know, the Zhanna Kadyrova, who is doing sculpture, she's producing a big sculpture for us. She's coming from time to time, and the work is produced in Vienna. She's kind of going there, but she prefers to stay in Ukraine, in Kyiv, and that I can totally understand.
Yeah, maybe not all people know it. Men between 18 and 60 are not allowed to leave the country. So yeah, they
Yes.
are possible, soldiers. I'm not talking now about the Vogel Island Arts, more for me as a curator. Yeah. So have you been traveling I have been to Russia the last year in September. It's not so long ago. Mm-hmm. And to Kiev, to the Ukraine, I have been only to Odessa and to Kiev and to Lviv. It's about 3 years ago. And it sounds maybe a little bit perverse, but I really think do you think it makes sense to go back?
For whom?
For both sides to do, I
didn't understand. For me or for you?
For me, for curators, for people in general.
To go back to Kyiv,
both Ukraine and to Russia. Everything what you hear about Russia, it's definitely kind of centered.
Yeah, in Russia, you cannot do anything right now. Like that would not be possible, and that would be dangerous for people who will be working with you. Not for you, but you will endanger your like junior curators and assistants who will be working with you, even if you kind of would think it will be okay. So in my view, no. Also in my view, as a Westerner, you should not support anything that would happen on a state level in Russia. And even private institutions, I would include in that as well, bigger private institutions. I think that should not be done. Small independent initiatives just do not exist, or they are so precarious, as I said, that it's just dangerous for everybody. So to Russia, no. To Ukraine, I know that things are happening there. The Pinchuk competition prize, so there are some exhibitions happening. But I don't know if anything is, that was probably planned some time ago, but I don't know if anything new is produced. To have a look what's going on, I wish I would be able to go and to kind of also to express my solidarity, but I can't. But depends for what, I would say, because one has to be very careful not to do some sort of like war tourism.
No, I don't want, of course, I don't want to put people, individuals into danger. So my question is, and now I'm speaking for Vogel Island Arts, again, what can we do? So it's what can we do? Yeah, should we create a special residency for Ukrainian artists? It almost sounds cynical, huh? And
but I think they're already getting many of the residencies. I think this is already happening.
yeah. No, but it's happening around the globe. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's you know, we are only one of many organizations who are struggling. The question is still, why do we do this?
Well, I think like for Ukrainian artists, I think the main task is to kind of make Ukraine win. That's probably not in the cards for an art institution. But meanwhile, yes, one can make Ukraine as a context and Ukrainian art more known, because frankly, like even in Europe, for decades, people were saying, they are all Russians. Kind of that there is such a country as Ukraine was not really kind of in the minds of many people. Indeed, it has a very long and interesting tradition. For instance, avant-garde art and poetry, not really known, because these generations were erased by Stalinist purges. So other things like the exhibitions I did about like filmmakers of Ukraine are outstanding. And they're very critical, used to be also very critical of their own country before Crimea and after Crimea, during Donbass. They made films Russians did not, actually. I must say that they had an amazing sensibility and did amazing work. But that's for Ukrainians. As for Russia, I think that indeed one has to have a strategy, and one cannot just leave this country, you know, rotten, and with all these people just die out inside, because they will not be able to go outside and they will be killed by Putin's regime. One has to develop a strategy of Cold War times, which was a strategy of cultural espionage, like developing some ways of communication that will be off the radar of the power, supporting some of the local initiatives and supporting people, getting them out, giving more information. So, but that already has been done, like in Cold War times, and one has to revive this in like just very simple is short waves of radio, for instance. But I'm sure this is already done as we speak. I hope so, because I'm afraid that with Russia it's a long-term strategy that has to be developed.
Yeah, as again, I'm not only thinking about Ukraine, also how do we continue our relationship with Russian artists and Russian curators and other Russians we were working with. You know, the question: can they go back? Can they not go back? Do they suffer of any sanctions afterwards? And so on. I'm very skeptical. I'm very also critical about these sanctions, the European Union sanctions against Russia. I'm not talking about the stopping the gas and oil, etc. So, but I know from my Russian artist friends and colleagues, especially a younger generation, they are suffering now they're not, all the museums, there is no market, only an internal market, but not a global market anymore. The artists or the whole cultural sphere is suffering of economic people don't know how to survive anymore. If you are talking here about that this is will take a long time, then again it's really changing not only the fabric of which we are thinking, it will change also the aesthetics, it will change dialogue, communication, and production of art from that part of the world, which will be seen somewhere else.
Look, I cannot completely agree to this, lamentations of young artists about that. I have my former students in Russia in the Alexander Rodchenko Photography and New Media School. Some of them are already arrested. Some are about to be arrested because they did some, anti-war gestures, actions. That's a serious thing. If people are complaining that they have no market, I can say that what I hear, that the Russian internal market is actually booming because they're rich, they don't have anywhere else to spend their money. So, and I also don't know that anyone, I lived on the Soviet Union. I know what does it mean to have no food, to have like no kind of Western clothes, no books even, they're not in that situation. Look, if there is no one is buying the paintings, they can go and work as a waiter or street cleaner. I don't see any problem with that. That's how we survived in Soviet times, just going off the system. One has to be ready to go off the system. And if they are not, and they still expect to have their visas, then I have no much sympathy to those people. Although I understand, of course I understand, but one also have to understand how to what extent you are or you were complicit with that. But it's not for me to judge. So I would really abstain to talk about it. It's just it's not like they are totally kind of in the worst situation there now. I think everything should be done for the war to stop. And if that can help, it's just like I'm not sure that can help. That's the problem.
Can we go back to the festival?
Yes.
I know that the festival started in 1968. In a time when Europe, also Western Europe, has been completely differently shaped. Styria, geopolitically, it's very close to former Yugoslavia, just 20 kilometers far away from the Slovenian border. But why it started as a literature festival, a music festival, a theater festival?
Oh, it started as all sorts of things, like an autumn festival of lots of music, but also exhibitions and literature as well, as a mixture of things.
But why did it, so was it for aesthetic reasons or political reasons? Because when I look into your program, but also from your previous directors, it's a social political festival.
Yes, but it's just like I'm trying to reflect on it, explicitly, also self-critically and critically. It's one of the initiatives from above, what is typical for Austria. It's like this Josephinism. So it's a modernization, an attempt of modernization from above. It was initiated by a local conservative politician, Hans Koren, and the mayor behind him. So that's strange combination of conservatism with liberalism and with some Nazi and Austro-fascist times behind them, because they were, of course, all related to that. It's very typical to early years of Documenta, very similar to that, just 10 years later, because at that time in Austria, many Nazis were still in power in education, in museums, former Nazis. So there was the denazification was not at the same scale as in Germany. Even in Germany, as we know, it was not total, but in Austria, very, very few cases, which means and especially Graz is a provincial town in relation to Vienna. So the mood at that moment, it was at the border, indeed, there was an Iron Curtain. So the mood was conservative and down, so to speak. And there was an attempt to open up the city, an attempt that was coming from the politicians, but artists joined it, enthusiastically. But there is still always from that moment till now, there is a moment of struggle, of a fight. The festival somehow fights for its place inside the city. It is also welcomed, but at this moment of fight is still present.
All those art initiatives are not necessarily loved by the entire population. I think that's nowhere the case. We you also know it on the island. It's not that all 2,500 people are joining our programs every day, or all exhibitions we are doing, but people living in a rural area have another relationship towards production, because many people produce, many people are living on the island producing art, thinking about art, doing art, not talking about only visual arts. That's also my learning. That's the difference between living in a rural or in an urban area. Coming back to one of my earlier questions, looking into how Europe, especially Western Europe, is shaped with all this millions or hundreds of thousands of art institutions, not talking only about contemporary art or those cutting-edge festivals. Do we need new forms, new models of to represent contemporary social political thinking, and in relation to art and culture? Are those models we are operating from, like a Kunsthalle or your festival or a museum for contemporary art, are those models still contemporary?
Well, I do believe yes. I believe in display. I believe in ideas and forms, shown to us. That can be in a museum, that can be in an exhibition, in a Kunsthalle. I love doing exhibitions. That can be in a parkour of different things, including performative, but that can be also in media. That can be in like newspapers, magazines, I don't know, on Instagram, probably. So I still do believe in that sort of type, like the culture is coming to us in some sort of like visual or textual information on which we reflect and on which we discuss. So this is probably still the model very broadly I'm using. There are other ideas, yes, indeed, that culture is something which we produce together by our togetherness and working together. This is also a possibility, and we did some projects of artists like Hiva K last year, cooking sessions. Yes, this is also something that art can do. But as I said, so my model is probably of that all the kind. I just are changing, but the model remains the same. So that's even if we are reading it or watching it on the screen of our smartphones, the model is still the same. We're getting something and we're reflecting on it.
No. I agree. Maybe I wasn't clear enough. Those are all institutions with funded with public money, and the larger museums are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'm always wondering, why are there no initiatives, no new initiatives visibly funded? Yeah, I'm not talking about project funding with public money. So that is just a question I'm asking myself already for many years, because all the institutions are traditional. So I'm not. I agree with you. So, but I'm. What can be? For me, the basic question is what can be done? So, and as I really think that now, where we are entering a new economical crisis and in the relationship towards public money. So because the public money is shifting towards other, let's call it, needs. So the energy crisis, the production of war material, the production of weapons, it's where all the public money goes. And I know in France or in Belgium, and the budget cuts for public institutions are on the go. So that will also, I can be neutral about it. No, I know that this art always will find a way. So but it will definitely, it will, I don't know what, but it will, who can participate in, it's about participation. Yeah, who has access to art and culture, when public authorities are moving their interest in other areas of public life. What?
Well, I'm of course not in support of cutting resources. On the other hand, again, as someone who lived in Soviet Union, you know, even architects found a way to work almost without money, you know, without bills, that creates some fictional, you know, program. It's if you are a Hollywood film director, then it's difficult, then it's tragedy for you. If you're not getting any money, then you cannot produce a film. But if you are an artist, you actually can, as you know. So there are many things that can be done with not that much support. I know that artists will be not happy about it, but some of the things do exist, being produced very cheaply, and they are not necessarily worse, not at all. And that also maybe mean that will be not that expensive, or opera production will be less expensive, or even, you know, free access. So actually more people could see it. So I don't think that cutting resources will necessarily mean less people will have access to art. Maybe the other way around.
I'm not only talking about cutting individual resources, public resources for museums, but maybe that's a whole other, whole other conversation. We have 10 minutes left, and we would welcome any questions. If not, then you have to write them in the chat. Okay, your festival is opening next week. Is that right?
Yeah, on the 22nd, yes.
And you are one very prominent there is Augustas. I'm interested about Augustas Serapina's work. He's a young artist from living in Vilnius, Lithuania. And when I looked at your website, when I visited him, while he still was a student, he built spaces to hide.
Yes.
You know, like private bunkers. Yeah. So which were not a bunker because you could enter and you could escape. So but to me, it's almost a metaphor of his life. People need to hide.
Yeah, since we are interested in, like, and me as a curator in Syria, I'm always interested in some, you know, skeletons in the closet, hidden spaces, hidden stories in history. So that, of course, he was a perfect candidate for that. And with that idea and the topic, I approached him for the exhibition in Neue Galerie. And, you know, he loves working in museums. So again, he found some hidden spaces there, and there will be communication of, it will be an installation, but during the opening days, there will be also a performance of people being there and communicating with us in the audience. So this is, yes, it's the metaphor of hidden people, hidden in war time, refugees, but also in general, some hidden dimension of a museum. Museum secrets. This will be probably the talk we will have with him, how it will be called. Yes, and thanks to actually your work with him. This is how I learned about him through other sources as well, and I was very, very glad to invite him. And he's coming on Monday to install.
Yeah, it sounds beautiful, and almost for me, it's like the metaphor of your festival.
Yeah. Yes,
So very nice. It's a very important question I also had on my radar, but Claire Shea reminded me. She's asking, I was curious about when you started planning this year's festival and when the idea for this topic developed. It was it's a yearly festival. The Russian war on Ukraine started in February. That said, you were in the midst of your planning. Did it change your ideas?
No, actually, you know, the thing is that this topic, I decided for this topic already last year. Can you believe me or not? Because when I went through the collection of Neue Galerie, this year, as an exception, we have a big exhibition, which is a rereading of collection with contemporary artists, but with a lot of historical materials. It's very unusual, happening only once. So I started to research the collection last year, and I discovered, and I was looking for things that speak to me on this punctum logic, not necessarily masterpieces, not necessarily big names, but something that makes me feel that they are weird things, and they are telling me something about our times and about this place as Styria. And what I discovered, that there are many, many paintings of all the times and eras that speak about wars. The war is happening somewhere nearby. So there are recruiters that are being recruited to the war, or they're coming back. There are people who are on vacation from the war, the officers and soldiers. There is one painting with refugees seen very, very far away. So one has this feeling that it was somewhere nearby, but as a background. So I wanted to have this topic. I initially wanted to call it a war nearby, but my German colleagues told me that I'm Krieg in the Ferne, so a war, because it was about being pushed out. It's about this kind of denial of the fact that there are wars in other places. So it became a war in the distance, a war, and also because the festival is based, the word steirischer herbst is the title of one poem of a Styrian poet of the beginning of 1916. And in this poem, he's sitting in a nice garden. And so I'm sitting in a garden in a nice Styria. And what I hear is a Zonzo battle. And I had even no idea what a Zonzo battle actually is, but it was 12 battles of Zonzo in what was at that time Italy, and now it is Slovenia, and where an enormous amount of people died during World War I. And this is something at the beginning of Hemingway. So always this background of a battle somewhere. So that was already decided last year, and then it became central.
That's, yeah, I know how planning processes function, but I remember when I was working on a show in 2000, exactly when 9/11 happened. It was an exhibition, maybe I should mention it. It was it's more than it's 20 years ago. The show was called New Heimat. New home, but Heimat it was in Germany, and Heimat has is a term which can be, it's a problematic term especially coming from a former Nazi country, and it was an ethnological exhibition together with the Ethnological Institute of the University of Frankfurt. And and it was a combination with visual artists, and they dropped out of the show because they thought, okay, everything what I'm doing now is useless. So that was my question. Do people, you said that not all people you invited from the Ukraine agreed working there. Did people after the war dropped actually, the war started already 8 years ago, in the
Yes.
and not only this year, but 8 years ago. But the full invasion in the Ukraine started this year, and yeah, did people drop out?
There were people who didn't agree, but not because of the topic, because of me. And not because of me, but because of my Russian passport. They even said that they apologize, they value me very much, but they find it impossible in that situation to collaborate with a Russian curator. I do not consider myself a Russian curator, but if other people, I don't work in Russia since 2014 because that was a crime and I had to leave. But if other people still see me this way, what can I say?
Okay, it was because of, okay, now I understand. It was because of you and not because of the theme necessarily. Okay. Yeah, that's makes me speechless. So
well, I have hopes that it might be different in the future, but right now also the public opinion on Ukrainian side also doesn't always, you know, support that. It's a complex story.
No, I'm very much aware of that. That was also why I was asking. Okay, I'm close to some Russians, younger Russian curators, and younger curators from the Ukraine, and it's a very complicated relationship, also from when you are in the middle. So how to deal with it? So because and then on top the political sanctions on Russia, and it's, in my opinion, very complicated also for the you know, so for the production of art. But I was listening to you, so well, it's you know, I'm just thinking. So, and I again, this series here, and especially this talk today, also for my team, who are all present, invisible. Michaela, are you there? Still there? It's a learning process for us. We want to learn, and from you, and from all our invited guests, and from all the artists we are inviting to the island for. Not only for being an artist in residence, and also for exhibitions or for all the other programs we are organizing. And I hope you have the chance once to visit in person.
I would be happy to, and I think residencies are actually an answer. To invite also maybe some Russian artists at some point who have to flee the regime. They will also learn a lot, I'm sure.
No,
about
we
this.
are. I am in. I cannot tell the name here. It's also too dangerous for that person. But I'm in contact with with a very young curator who I think is fantastic, and he's looking for ways to escape. So, but that is. But we know that those that this is also not so easy. People have families, or coming from a family, having relationships, and I know it from my own family history. Yeah, so it's not just easy to say goodbye where you are coming from, because you're always carrying your history with you your entire life. Yeah, and you know, so this is why I'm so grateful, and thank you that you are speaking out here, and that you're organizing this, what I think, a very important festival. Are there any, can we join most of us here who are in that seminar, are definitely not going to Graz, it's too far away. What can we participate in some or another way virtually?
Yeah, the films that were of Ukrainian filmmakers that were shown on the prologue show in July, they will be streamed during the festival, which I really can recommend to see. Some of our new filmic commissions will be also online. So this is all on our website. So it is announced, and the will be recorded, and this will also appear online, not immediately, but after a week. So during the festival, there is definitely something to see, and there is a lot of texts we have written for the chapters of the exhibition, which is really interesting. I can only recommend some very unusual stuff to be put together, which is put together, and so that one can also look at and read something about it. But yes, of course, I know we're far away, but we're still doing important things, being very far away from each other.
Okay. Thank you, Ekaterina. But there is one more question which I need to answer, because it's addressed to me, but I read it loud. Nicolaus, can you please explain? It's from Anna Pasakas. Can you please explain why you are against European Union sanctions? Any trade with Russia provides revenues to finance the war with Ukraine. Yeah, I get that question, but it's not as easy as this. Sanctions are also put on exchange programs with universities or museums, all academic life and journalism, etc. Sanctions, economical sanctions cover the entire life and exchange. I know that this. I'm not a politician, and I think there must be more complex, more other ways, yeah, to specific sanctions. It's also cultural sanctions happening with political and with economical sanctions. Michaela, any last question from you?
No, I have no questions, but if there are no further questions, we wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time and for joining our Lost and Found Agency series today. To everyone else who is still here, the next Lost and Found Agency talk will be at the end of next month with Pablo Larios, who is a writer and art critic. So we hope you'll be able to join us. Yeah, we hope you'll be able to join us.
I will join. Send me also the information about.
Yeah, but we have the specific day already, Michaela.
Yes, I think it's on. It's a Saturday. I have to look it up. Give me 2 seconds.
Yeah, it's always the Saturdays every not in December, I think, but then we series going throughout the year, and due to the different time zones we are operating.
The 29th of October.
29th of October. Yeah.
Thank
Pablo
you.
Larios, yeah, that's after your festival.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
Guys, for an interesting conversation, and thank you for organizing all of this.
Thank you all.
Thank you again.
Bye.
Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.